The wind on Mujaun did not howl. It sighed, a long, slow breath that brushed across the endless plains of gray-green grass. Kim Jae stood in the doorway of his habitat, a simple prefabricated dome, and listened to that sigh. It was the only sound. He bought this planet, this single plot of terraformed rock on the galactic frontier, for that silence. The advertisement called it Desolate. To Jae, after a lifetime in the roaring megacity of Gumho, where the sky was a neon tapestry and the air hummed with the vibration of a billion lives, Desolate sounded like peace. Inside, the habitat was neat and spare. A cot, a workbench, a kitchen unit, a small table with 2 chairs. Only one chair was ever pulled out. On the wall above the table was a single photograph, a simple frame holding an image of a woman with a kind, smiling face. Sumi. Jae moved to the sink, filled a kettle from the tap, and set it on the heating coil. His movements were methodical, practiced. He opened a small tin and spooned roasted barley into a ceramic pot. The routine was an anchor. 2 years had passed since the illness finally won. 2 years since the quiet of his city apartment became a crushing, deafening thing, filled only with absence. His job as a civil engineer, once a puzzle he loved, became meaningless lines on a screen. His friends, with their careful, pitying looks, felt like visitors from a distant country. He needed a different kind of quiet. He needed a space where the emptiness was outside, not inside. So he spent everything, Sumi's life insurance, his savings, his pension, on E737, a star and a number, which he quietly renamed Mujaun. The Silent One. The kettle whistled, a sharp, friendly sound in the quiet. He poured the hot water over the barley, and the warm, nutty scent filled the small space. It was Sumi's tea. He carried the pot and a single cup to the table, sitting facing the photograph. "The reclamation pump is giving me trouble again," he said aloud, his voice rough from lack of use. He spoke to her sometimes. It didn't feel strange here. "The filter housing is cracked, probably from the last cold cycle. I'll have to patch it today." He sipped the tea, the familiar taste of comfort. Through the large window by the table, he watched the grass bend in waves under the gentle wind. A small, 6-legged creature like a rock with legs scuttled past. He had named them pebble runners. They were the only native fauna he'd seen, and they ignored him completely. It was perfect. After his tea, Jae geared up. His outfit was not an explorer's suit, but a durable engineer's work suit, stained with lubricant and dust. He grabbed his toolkit and a replacement polymer sheet from a locker. The water reclamation unit was 50 meters from the habitat, a sturdy collection of tanks, pipes, and filters that sucked moisture from the air and purified it. It was the heart of his survival. Jae approached it with a professional eye, running a hand over the casing. He found the crack, a hairline fracture along a seam in the main filter housing. He worked in silence, broken only by the click of tools and his own focused breathing. He sanded the area around the crack, mixed a 2-part sealant, and applied it with a steady hand. This was the work he understood. Fixing, mending, making broken things whole again. It was a physical problem with a physical solution. There was no mystery to a cracked pipe, only the logic of pressure and material fatigue. As he waited for the sealant to set, he leaned against the warm housing and looked out at his world. His view stretched to low, rolling hills in the distance. The sky was a pale, perpetual lavender. No clouds, no birds, just the sighing wind and the grass. For a moment, a profound and simple contentment settled over him. The grief was still there, a familiar weight in his chest, but here it didn't drown him. It was just part of the landscape, like the hills. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was a space where he could finally hear his own thoughts. He was alone, but for the first time in years, he did not feel lonely. He felt present. The sealant was dry. Jae reassembled the housing, cycled the pump, and watched the clear water begin to trickle into the storage tank. A job done. A small victory. He walked back to the habitat as the smaller of Mujaun's 2 moons began its climb into the sky. He made a simple dinner of noodles and vegetables from his hydroponic garden. He ate at the table with Sumi's picture. Later, he sat on the small step outside his door. The stars were emerging, brilliant and cold, sharper than any he'd ever seen from the light-polluted core worlds. The sensor pole at the corner of his compound blinked a soft, steady green. All perimeter systems normal. No movement. No life signs. Jay took a deep breath of the cool, thin air. This was what he paid for. This was the quiet. The vast, unbroken peace of a world where nothing happened. Where the only story was the slow turn of the seasons and the maintenance of a machine. He went inside, sealed the door and prepared for sleep. The habitat's soft interior lights glowed. The system status panel reported all functions optimal. The silence was complete. As he lay in his cot, the last thing he thought of was the crack in the filter housing, now solid and sealed. He had fixed it. He had solved the problem. On Mujown, problems were simple. They were things you could see and touch and repair. He did not know that out in the sighing dark, beyond the reach of his perimeter sensors, other eyes watched the steady green blink of his sensor pole. He did not know that his silence was about to be broken by a problem no amount of sealant could fix. For now, there was only the wind, the stars, and the deep, grateful quiet of a man who believed he had finally found a place where he could be alone with his memories. The quiet held for 3 more days. Jay filled his time with work. He checked the solar arrays, cleaned the air filters, and tended his small hydroponic garden. The routine was a comfort. It built a wall around him, a wall of simple tasks that kept the larger emptiness at bay. On the 4th day, the sensor log showed a glitch. It was a minor thing. At 3:47 Standard Time, the motion detector on the eastern perimeter had flickered. For exactly 1.2 seconds, it registered a moving object the size of a large dog. Then it went back to normal. Jay reviewed the data over his morning tea. A system ghost, he decided. Pebble Runner may be passing closer than usual. The sensors were good, but they weren't perfect. He made a note to do a physical check later in the week. 2 days after that, he was outside calibrating the moisture collectors when he felt it. A prickling on the back of his neck. The feeling of being watched. He stopped and turned slowly, scanning the gray-green plains. Nothing moved but the grass. The hills were still. He shook his head. Too much solitude. The mind could play tricks, filling silence with imagined presences. But the next morning, the feeling was harder to dismiss. The main water tank's level was lower than it should have been. Not by much, just a few liters. A leak? He spent hours checking every pipe, every joint from the reclamation unit to the tank. He found nothing. The seal he had made was holding perfectly. He stood, hands on his hips, frowning at the tank's readout. Evaporation? The air was dry. It didn't make sense. Computer, run a full diagnostic on the water storage and delivery system, he said, walking back inside. Diagnostic initiated. The flat, pleasant voice of the Habitat AI replied. No faults detected. All systems operational. Total water loss within acceptable parameters for atmospheric conditions. Jay was not satisfied. Acceptable parameters felt like an excuse. He was a man who understood machines. They followed rules. This was a rule he didn't know. He decided to walk the eastern perimeter. He took his hand scanner and a sturdy metal bar from his workshop, just in case. The sun was high, casting short shadows. The wind, as always, sighed. He reached the eastern sensor pole. It looked fine. No physical damage. He was about to turn back when a flash of color in the grass caught his eye. Not gray-green, not brown, a deep, rusty red. He knelt. It was a scrap of fabric, torn and frayed. He picked it up. The material was strange. It felt strong, like a high-grade synthetic, but woven in a complex, almost organic pattern. It was dirty and stained, but the original color was a vivid burgundy. This was not from his gear. His clothes were simple utility cloth. This was something else. It was alien. His heart began to beat a little faster. He looked around again, more carefully. A few meters away, the grass was pressed down. Not a neat path, but a disturbed area. He moved closer. In a patch of softer soil, he saw a footprint. It was not an animal print. It was a boot print, long and narrow with a distinct, segmented tread pattern. It was deep. Whoever made it was tall, and they had been standing here, putting their full weight on one foot, for some time. Watching. Jay straightened up, the scrap of fabric tight in his fist. The silence of Mujown suddenly felt different. It was no longer an empty quiet. It was a waiting quiet, a hiding quiet. He looked at the footprint, then at the distant, silent hills. Someone was here. Someone was on his desolate planet. He walked back to the habitat, his pace quick and deliberate. He did not run. Running would make it real. Inside, he locked the door, a habit he had fallen out of. He went to his main console and pulled up the sensor logs for the entire week. He looked at the data with new eyes. The ghost signal at 3:47. A power fluctuation in the middle of the previous night. A thermal sensor on the north side that had briefly spiked and then corrected itself. Individually, they were nothing. Together, with the fabric and the footprint, they formed a pattern. A careful, hesitant pattern of observation. They were scouting him. Whoever they were being cautious. They hadn't approached the habitat. They hadn't tried to contact him. They were just watching, learning his routines, noting when he slept, when he worked. That night, Jay did not sit on his step. He stayed inside, the lights low. He felt like a specimen in a jar. His quiet refuge had been invaded. The grief and the peace were pushed aside by a new, sharp feeling. Anxiety. He checked the system display again and again. All perimeter sensors glowed green. Normal. But he no longer trusted the green light. He tried to read, but the words meant nothing. He tried to sleep, but every small sound from the habitat systems made his eyes snap open. Finally, he got up and went to the large window. He looked out into the deep violet of the night, and he saw it. Not close. Kilometers away, nestled in the foothills of the northern range. A tiny, flickering point of orange light. A fire. It was there for perhaps 10 minutes. Then, as if snuffed out by the wind, it vanished. Jay stood at the window for a long time after the light was gone. The proof was undeniable. He was not alone. The planet was not empty. The desolate plot he bought for solitude now held another story. One he was not part of. Who were they? Why were they hiding? The scrap of fabric was not from a survival suit. It was from a uniform or armor. He thought of the missing water. They were thirsty. He looked from the dark hills back to the soft glow of his own habitat. His sanctuary had become a beacon. He was no longer a man alone in the quiet. He was a man in a lit room, with unseen eyes in the dark looking in. The rules of his world had changed. The problem was no longer a cracked pipe. The problem was alive, intelligent, and right outside his door. And he had no idea what it wanted. For 2 days, Jay did not leave the habitat. He watched the sensors. He saw more ghosts in the data. He saw the distant fire once more, in a different location. They were moving. They were getting closer. He knew he could not hide forever. His supplies were good, but his water would need checking soon. The garden needed tending. Life, even a solitary one, required maintenance. More than that, the fear was a poison. It was turning his quiet place into a cage. He had come here to stop feeling trapped. He would not let that happen again. On the morning of the 3rd day, he made a decision. He would not wait for them to come to his door. He would go out, not to fight but to see, to understand. He prepared with careful thought. He wore his work suit. He took his largest wrench, not to use as a weapon, but as a tool that could be seen. He took his hand scanner and a small pack. In the pack he put a multi-tool, a first aid kit, a bottle of water, and 4 rice balls from his dinner the night before, wrapped in seaweed. It was a peace offering, or at least a proof he was not a threat. He left the habitat, the door locking behind him with a solid click. The wind was cooler that day. The grass whispered secrets he could not understand. He walked north, towards the hills where he had seen the fires. His scanner was active, sweeping for heat, for movement. For the first hour, it found nothing but small ground animals and the steady heat of rocks. He entered the mouth of a shallow canyon. The walls were not high, but they rose on either side, cutting off the wind. The silence here was deep and heavy. His boots crunched on loose gravel. This was the place. He could feel it in his bones. This was where the footprint had pointed. He stopped in the center of the canyon floor. He took a slow breath. His heart was a drum in his chest. He spoke, his voice loud in the stillness, but not shouting. "I know you are here," he said. "I am alone. I am not a soldier. I mean no harm." The words hung in the air. Nothing happened. A pebble runner scuttled up the canyon wall. Then, from behind a large, weathered boulder to his left, a figure stood up. Then another from a crevice on his right. And another and another. They emerged from the shadows of the rocks, from places that seemed too small to hide anyone. They were tall, all of them, and dressed in armor that was elegant but badly damaged. It was made of plates that looked like dark ceramic, strapped over a suit of the same burgundy material as the scrap in his pocket. Their faces were sharp, their eyes a striking shade of gold. Their hair was dark, tied back tightly, but Jay saw past the armor and the fierce eyes. He saw the hollows in their cheeks. He saw the way one of the younger ones, a woman with a long scratch down her arm, leaned slightly against the rock for support. He saw the dust and grime. He saw the exhaustion that went deeper than the bone. There were 7 of them. They moved with a tired grace, fanning out to surround him. They held weapons, curved bows made of a material that seemed to glow faintly from within. Short, crystalline blades. They were pointed at him. The woman who had risen first stepped forward. She was clearly the leader. Her armor had more markings, and her gaze was like a physical weight. She held her energy bow, the string humming with a low, dangerous light. "You are on our ground," she said. Her voice was rough, as if from lack of water, but her words in galactic standard were clear. "This planet is registered to me," Jay said, keeping his own voice steady. He did not raise his wrench. "Kim J. I live here alone." The leader's eyes flickered over him, judging his work suit, his tool, his lack of obvious weapons. A flicker of confusion crossed her sharp features. "You are the human? The one in the metal den?" "Yes." She took another step. The others tightened the circle slightly. "We are Huntresses of the Way," she said, the name sounding like a sigh of wind. "Our ship fell from the sky. It is broken in the high rocks. We have been here for many cycles." She swallowed, a dry, difficult motion. "Our food is gone. Our water is gone. We scanned your den. It has power. It has systems. It has life." She looked at her huntresses, then back at Jay. Her expression was not cruel. It was resolved. It was the look of someone who has run out of every other option. "We must have it to survive. We do not wish to spill your blood, human. But we will." The circle was complete. 7 starving warriors against 1 man with a wrench. The math was very simple. Jay looked from one face to another. He saw their desperation. It was not greed. It was not conquest. It was the raw animal need to see the next sunrise. He had seen a similar look in Sumi's eyes near the end. A fierce, terrible wanting just to be. He understood then. They weren't invaders. They were survivors. And they had chosen to reveal themselves not to attack, but to give him a choice. A warrior's choice. Slowly, very slowly, Jay knelt. He placed the heavy wrench on the gravel in front of him. The huntresses tensed, weapons rising. But he did not stand back up. He shrugged the pack from his shoulders. Keeping his movements clear and calm, he opened the flap. He took out the bottle of water and the wrapped package of rice balls. He placed them on the ground beside the wrench. Then he sat back on his heels, his hands open and empty on his knees. "If you were going to attack," he said, his voice softer now, "you would have done it in the night. You would not have shown yourselves. You are huntresses, but you are not predators right now." He nodded towards the food and water. "You are just hungry." He looked up at the leader, meeting her golden eyes. "My name is Jay. Eat first. Then we can talk about your ship." For a long moment, nothing moved. The huntresses stared at the items on the ground. The bottle of clear water. The simple, wrapped food. Their weapons did not waver, but a new tension filled the air. It was the tension of starving people presented with a meal, held back only by deep, hard-worn suspicion. The leader, Yuna, looked from the offerings to Jay's face. She searched for trickery, for a trap in his calm posture. She saw only weariness and a strange, open patience. Her own pride warred with the painful knot of hunger in her stomach. Behind her, one of the younger ones, Mira, let out a soft, almost imperceptible sound. A faint gasp of longing. Yuna made a sharp gesture with her hand. The circle did not break, but the weapons lowered a fraction. She stepped forward, her movements still fluid and dangerous. She knelt, never taking her eyes off Jay, and picked up the water bottle. She examined the simple plastic cap, then unscrewed it. She sniffed the contents. Clean water. A treasure. She did not drink. Instead, she stood and handed it to Mira. The younger huntress took it with trembling hands. She looked at Yuna, then at Jay, her eyes wide. At Yuna's nod, she lifted the bottle to her lips. She took one sip, then another, trying to be careful. Then the need took over, and she drank deeply, water spilling down her chin. The sound of that swallow broke the spell. Yuna picked up the wrapped food. She opened it. The smell of rice and sesame oil rose into the dry canyon air. She broke a rice ball in half, her own hands not quite steady. She ate one piece in 2 bites. She handed the rest to the huntress on her left, a woman named Hannah. The food was passed, each woman taking a small portion, eating with a focused, desperate intensity. Jay watched, still on his knees. He saw the way their bodies seemed to unlock slightly, the immediate effect of calories and hydration. He saw the sharp edge of panic in their eyes soften, just a little. They were still dangerous, but they were no longer balanced on the very edge of a cliff. Yuna finished her share and wiped her hands. She studied Jay again, her gaze different now, calculating but not hostile. "Why?" she asked simply. The single word held a universe of confusion. "Because you asked for my home," Jay said, getting slowly to his feet. He made no move toward his wrench. "But you asked with words first, not with arrows. That means something." He looked around at the canyon, at their gaunt faces. "This is no place to live. Or to die. Your ship. Can it be fixed?" Yuna's expression darkened with frustration. "The core is dead. The skyfire is gone. Our tools can do nothing. It is a tomb on the mountain." "I might be able to help," Jay said. "I fix things. It is what I do. But I need to see it. I need diagnostics." A low murmur went through the huntresses. Distrust flickered. Hannah spoke, her voice stronger now with food in her. "You would help us leave? After we said we would take your home." "You are not taking my home," Jay said, his voice firm for the first time. "You are sharing my food. That is a different thing. If I can help fix your ship, you leave. My home stays mine. That is the agreement." Yuna considered him for a long time. The wind picked up, whistling softly through the canyon. Finally, she gave a short, sharp nod. "We will show you, but you will not go alone. And you will not go armed." She gestured to his wrench. "That is a tool, not a weapon," Jay said. But he shrugged. "Keep it here. I will need my scanner, though. It is also a tool." Yuna agreed. She detailed 2 huntresses, Hannah and the quiet Jiun, to accompany him. The others would stay, guarding the canyon approach. It was clear they did not fully trust him not to lead an army back. The idea was so far from Jay's reality it almost made him smile. The walk to the ship was long and steep. Hannah led the way, her movements sure even in her weakened state. Jiun walked behind Jay, a silent, watchful presence. They did not speak. The only sounds were their footsteps and the wind. The ship was nestled in a high rocky cleft, camouflaged from the sky. It was sleek, like a bird of prey, but one wing was crumpled against the rock face. The hull was scarred from atmospheric entry. A large, blackened hole was visible near the stern where something had exploded. Jay walked around it, His engineers seeing past the damage to the design. It was advanced, but the principles were familiar. Energy management, structural integrity. He saw where the main power conduit had been severed. The core may not be dead, he said, more to himself than to them. It might just be cut off. Yuna, who had followed with the others, produced a small data crystal from her belt. The final logs, the system diagrams. Jay took it. He found a flat rock and sat, plugging the crystal into his hand scanner. Lines of alien script and schematic diagrams flickered to life. He scrolled through them, his brow furrowed. He ignored the weapon systems, the drive specifications. He looked for auxiliary power, for life support grids, for primary electrical pathways. He zoomed in on a subsystem. Then he smiled. It was a small, tight smile, but it was real. He looked up at Yuna, who was watching him intently. Your main fusion core is offline, yes. The containment field failed. I cannot fix that here. But look. He turned the scanner to show her. This is your secondary power network. It runs on a different system. It is like the heartbeat of the ship. It is damaged here and here. He pointed to two junctures on the schematic. The parts that failed, I have seen them before. On old terraformer generators. I have spares. Not the same, but close enough. I can make them work. The Huntresses stared at him. Hope, a fragile and foreign thing, began to dawn on their tired faces. You can make the heart beat again? Yuna asked, her voice low. I can give it a pulse, Jay corrected. Enough, maybe, to start other systems, to get your lights on, to power your tools, maybe to call for help. He stood, brushing dust from his pants. But I need your word. No one enters my home. You can stay out here. I will bring the parts and we will work. Together. Yuna looked at her huntresses. She saw the same question in their eyes. Could they trust this strange, quiet man who fixed things? Her own word, once given, was iron. She met Jay's gaze. You have my word, Yuna said. No one will enter your den. We will work. And you will show us how to make the heart beat. The next morning, a new routine began. It was a quiet, careful dance. Jay worked in his habitat alone, but now he worked with purpose. He pulled open storage lockers and examined old equipment crates. He was looking for specific things. A voltage regulator from a broken moisture sensor, a spool of high-capacity wiring, a set of crystalline fuses he had kept as spares for his own power grid. He packed these into a crate. He also packed other things. A larger jug of water, a container of nutrient bars from his emergency supply, a basic medical kit with disinfectant and bandages. He carried the crate out into the morning light. Yuna and Hannah were waiting at the edge of the sensor perimeter, exactly where he had asked them to wait. They did not step onto the cleared ground around his home. They kept their word. These are the parts one think will work, Jay said, setting the crate down. He pointed to the other items. And this is for you. For today. Yuna looked at the supplies, then at Jay. Her proud face struggled with gratitude. She gave another of her short nods. We will share this with the others. The walk to the ship became a daily journey. At first, only Yuna and Hannah went with him. Jay would study the ship systems on his scanner, then go to a broken junction box or a burned-out relay. He would explain what he was doing in simple terms. This wire is like a road for electricity. It is broken. We must build a new road. He would show them how to strip the insulation, how to splice the fibers together. Jiun, the quiet one, watched these lessons most closely. On the third day, as Jay struggled to hold a connector in place while applying solder, she knelt beside him. Without a word, her slender hands took the tools from him. She held the connector steady, her grip firm and precise. She had watched and she had learned. Thank you, Jiun, Jay said. She did not smile, but her eyes met his for a second before she looked back at her work. Slowly, the team grew. Jay learned their names. The fierce one with the steady hands was Hannah. The young, recovering one was Mira. The tall one who was good at lifting heavy panels was Sua. Jiun understood mechanics. Yuna led, made decisions, and carried the heaviest weight of worry. Jay, in turn, became more than the human in the den. He was Jay who knew how things worked. He did not command. He suggested, "Hannah, can you pull this cable? So this panel needs to come off. June, check the flow here." They stopped being the Huntresses and started being Yuna, Hannah, June, Mira, Sua, and the two others, Unji and Min. They were people, not a problem. In the evenings, Jay would return to his habitat. He would eat alone again, but the silence inside was different. It was the quiet after a day of useful work. He would look at Sumi's picture and tell her about his day. June is a fast learner. They are very strong. They miss their home. One afternoon, while taking a break in the shadow of the ship's hull, Hannah asked him a question. "Your people, are they all fixers? Like you?" Jay shook his head, taking a sip from his water canteen. "No, not all. My job was to build things, bridges, water systems. Then later I just fixed my own things." "Why are you here?" Mira asked softly. "So far from your bridges?" Jay was quiet for a moment. He looked out over the plains below. "My wife," he said finally, the word still tender. "She was sick for a long time. After she was gone, the noise of the city, it was too much. I needed quiet." Yuna studied him. "You came here to be alone. And then we came. We are a loud problem." Jay almost smiled. "You were a very quiet problem at first. But no, you are not a problem. You are a broken ship. And I know how to fix broken things." Yuna looked at her hands, calloused and stained with new grime. "We thought we would find a warrior, or a hermit to defeat. We did not expect a handyman." She said the word carefully, as if it were from an old and forgotten language. This time Jay did smile, a small, genuine one. "Sometimes," he said, getting to his feet and picking up his tools. "Fixing a broken thing is harder than breaking a whole one. It takes more patience." He went back to work on the secondary power conduit. June joined him, holding a light. As they worked, a low hum suddenly vibrated through the hull. A strip of emergency lighting along the corridor inside flickered once, then glowed a steady, soft blue. A sound came from behind them, a collective gasp. Jay turned. All 7 Huntresses were standing, staring at the blue light as if it were a miracle. It was just a light, but it was their light on their ship, powered for the first time in months. Mira had tears cutting clean lines through the dust on her cheeks. Yuna walked over to Jay. She looked at the light, then at him. Her proud face was unguarded for a moment, showing pure, stunned relief. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. The blue light said it for her. Jay felt a deep, warm satisfaction settle in his chest. It was the same feeling he got from sealing a cracked pipe, but 100 times stronger. He had connected the wires correctly. The road was open. The heart of the ship had given its first, faint pulse. The blue light changed everything. It was a sign, a promise that the tomb could live again. The work did not get easier, but the spirit of it changed. A grim struggle for survival became a shared project. Jay's habitat workshop became a part of the effort. He did not let them inside, but he used his tools and fabricator openly at a table outside his door. Yuna and the others would bring damaged components from the ship. A cracked relay housing, a fused sensor array. Jay would study it, then feed specifications into his fabricator, using his stock of base polymers to print a rough, functional copy. "It will not be pretty," he told June, handing her a newly printed coupling. "But it should hold the pressure." June took it, her fingers tracing the simple, utilitarian lines. "Pretty does not matter. Working matters." With power restored to small sections of the ship, they could run proper diagnostics. Jay sat on a rock with his scanner, Yuna looking over his shoulder. He pointed to a schematic of the communication array. "The main dish is damaged. But the core transmitter here," he tapped the screen. "It looks intact. It just has no power and a broken link to the control computer. If we can run a direct line from the secondary power we just restored, you might be able to send a distress ping. A short call for help." Yuna's eyes lit up. A call for help was more than hope. It was a plan. "Can we do it?" "We can try," Jay said. We will need cable. A lot of it. This sparked a new mission. Hannah, the scout, took Jay on long walks across Mujown, places he had never bothered to explore. She showed him where mineral deposits were, where the ground was soft for digging. She was looking for useful ores, but Jay saw something else. Look, he said, stopping at a patch of tall, reed-like plants by a slow river. He cut one stalk with his knife. It was fibrous and strong. This is not metal, but it is tough. We can braid it, for temporary bindings, or to mark paths. Hannah, used to seeking only what she knew, looked at the plain reed with new eyes. Back at the ship, Sua and Min worked on the heavy labor, moving damaged plating under Jay's direction to access the transmitter core. They were stronger than him, and they learned quickly which bolts to turn and which supports to avoid. One evening, as the small sun dipped below the hills, they all sat in a loose circle near the ship, sharing a meal Jay had brought. A large pot of simple vegetable stew. It was the first time they shared food not from desperation, but from routine. The silence was comfortable. Mira, her strength returning, spoke up. Our homeworld, it was green, with 3 moons. But there was a fight. A corporation and another clan. They wanted our hunting grounds for mining. She stirred her stew. We were escorting our elders to a new place. Our ship was attacked. We ran. And then we fell here. Hannah nodded. We are not warriors first. We are protectors. We failed. Her voice was heavy. You did not fail, Jay said quietly. All eyes turned to him. You are still protecting them. You are here. You are trying to get back. That is the job. Not just the fight, but the staying alive. The getting home. Yuna watched him, her bowl forgotten in her hands. You speak like a huntress. I speak like an engineer, Jay corrected gently. When a bridge is damaged, you do not say the bridge failed. You say it needs repair. You fix it so people can cross again. He looked around at their faces, lit by the fading light. You are fixing your bridge. The next day, they tackled the communication link. It was a maze of burnt-out circuitry deep inside the ship. Jay and Jiun worked side by side for hours in the cramped space, their heads close together. Jiun's small hands were perfect for the delicate work. Connect the red wire here, Jay instructed, holding a light. Not the orange one, the red one. I see, Jiun murmured. Her fingers moved surely, making the connection. The orange goes to the amplifier? Yes, good. You see the pattern. She did. Piece by piece, the pathway was rebuilt. Finally, Jay gave the signal. Yuna, waiting at the ship's makeshift control console, entered the command sequence. They held their breath. A light on the console blinked from red to amber. A low, steady hum filled the compartment. The transmitter has power, Yuna announced, her voice tight with emotion. It is listening to the stars. Could not send their story yet. Could only send an automated ping, a digital whisper saying I am here on a loop. But it was a voice. After months of silence, their ship had a voice again. They all stood on the rocky ledge outside, looking up at the stars. The Huntresses stood together, shoulders touching. Jay stood a little apart, but he was part of the circle. They will hear it, Hannah said, believing it for the first time. It may take time, Jay said, always practical. But the signal is clear. Yuna walked over to him. She looked at him for a long moment, then placed a hand on her chest, a formal gesture. Jay, you have given us more than power. You have given us our voice back. This is a debt. Jay shook his head. No debt. You gave me your word. You kept it. We are even. He offered her a small, tired smile. Now we finish the job. We make the voice strong enough to tell its story. The work after that had the feeling of a final chapter. The goal was clear. They needed to boost the signal, to turn the whisper into a shout that could be heard by passing clan ships or friendly traders. Jay spent long hours in his habitat, his fabricator humming constantly as he made signal amplifiers and power converters. The Huntresses, in turn, scoured the ship for any undamaged component that could help bringing him pieces of broken technology like offerings. The silent planet, Mujown, was silent no more. The canyon echoed with the sounds of industry. The ring of a tool on metal, the low murmur of instructions, the occasional short laugh. Jay's world, once defined by the sigh of the wind, was now filled with the sounds of repair. 2 weeks after the first blue light glowed, it was ready. The transmitter was patched into every bit of power the battered secondary systems could provide. Jay ran the final diagnostic on his scanner, June watching his screen with focused eyes. "It is good," Jay said. "The signal cascade is stable. It will broadcast your identification and location on all standard distress bands. It will repeat every few hours." Una stood at the console. Her hand hovered over the initiation control. She looked at her huntresses, gathered around. Their faces were clean now, their eyes bright with a hope that was no longer fragile. She looked at Jay, who gave a single nod. She pressed the control. A deep, resonant thrum pulsed through the ship's hull, a feeling more than a sound. On the console, a waterfall of alien script scrolled by, the ship's name, its clan codes, the coordinates for E737. Their call was now singing into the dark, a steady, electronic heartbeat. A cheer went up, not the fierce cry of warriors, but the joyful, relieved shout of survivors. Mira hugged Sua. Hannah clapped Jiun on the back. Una simply closed her eyes, her shoulders slumping as if a great weight had finally been lifted. The celebration was quiet, but real. That evening, Jay brought the last of his stored fruit, and they had a final meal together outside the ship. The mood was different. There was relief, but also a new, unspoken tension. The job was done. The reason for their strange alliance was fading. The next morning, Una came to the habitat alone. Jay was waiting outside. She held a small, sleek device in her hands. It was a communicator, made of the same dark ceramic as her armor. "The signal is strong," she said. "A ship will come. It may be days or weeks, but it will come." She held out the device to him. "This is tuned to a secure frequency, a line that only my clan can hear. Mujown is your sanctuary. We will not speak of it to others. But you," she paused, choosing her words, "you are no longer alone in the silent places. If you ever have need, if the silence becomes too heavy, call. We will hear you." Jay took the communicator. It was cool and light in his palm. It was not a gift given lightly. It was a thread, a connection thrown across the stars. "Thank you, Una." She placed a hand on her chest and bowed her head slightly, the full formal gesture of her people. "Kim J, the handyman, you fixed more than our ship." Then she turned and walked back towards the canyon, back to her family. He watched her go. The following hours were a blur of final preparations from the canyon. But Jay did not go up. They needed time with each other. He stayed at his habitat, tidying his workshop, feeling the shape of the new quiet. Just before dusk, he heard it. A low, harmonic whine that built from a whisper to a deep song. He walked out onto his hill. High above, the Huntresses' ship, lights glowing brightly along its seams, rose from the canyon. It hovered for a moment, pointed towards the stars. Then, with a flash of energy that momentarily brightened the whole lavender sky, it shot upwards, becoming a streak, then a point of light, then nothing. The silence rushed back in. It was complete. The wind sighed through the grass. Jay stood there for a long time. He felt the emptiness around him. But inside, he felt no echo of the old, crushing loneliness. The space inside him felt different. It held the memory of Sumi, warm and dear. And it also held the memory of the last month. Of Hannah's fierce concentration, of Jiun's quiet skill, of Myra's first smile, of Yuna's unwavering word. He looked down at the communicator in his hand. He walked back to his habitat. Inside, he placed the device on the shelf next to Sumi's photograph. 2 objects. One for the past. One for a possible future. He made a pot of barley tea. He sat at his table, in the quiet he had bought and fought for. He looked out at the deepening twilight. The sensor pole blinked its steady, green rhythm. All normal. No movement. No life signs. He sipped his tea. The solitude was still there, vast and profound. But it was not an enemy anymore. It was a choice. He had shared it, and in sharing, he had somehow reclaimed it. The planet was still desolate. But he was not. He was a man who had fixed a broken thing. And in doing so, he had found a quiet, enduring strength he didn't know he still possessed. The silence was no longer empty. It was peaceful. It was his. And somewhere in the stars, a connection, faint as a signal ping, hummed softly on a shelf, reminding him that in the great quiet of the universe, no one is ever truly alone.